Hi, Brad from Brad's AC Performance and Finks Performance Suspension. Today's video is Skidoo Gen 4, Gen 5 electric power steering install. Good. So I've been wanting to be able to put power steering on a snowmobile for years, and the 850 Gen 5 presents that opportunity. I also believe it'll work on Gen 4 as well. Let me show you a few of the parts that are going to take to make this happen. And that's the electric servo motor, which is the heart of the unit. Done a lot of research on these, and I found one that actually is adjustable. I can put an adjustment rheostat up near the handlebar somewhere, so you can adjust the amount of assist you're getting. We had to make some special parts like this piece here to locate it or lock it into the chassis so that it doesn't twist. ECU unit that comes with it, and several other fail-safes that are built in. This is a plate that I had made. We'll show you how that works later in the video, and I'll have a list of all the hardware, and all the hardware will come with the kit. Now keep in mind this is experimental, so when you buy one of these I'm going to require a hold harmless agreement. I will go over at the end of the video all the redundancy I put into this so that it's somewhat fail-proof. I'm not going to say 100%, but I'm 100% confident in it. And a couple of things we have to do is we have to modify the steering post and have to modify the muffler. In the muffler we had to put a dent right here to clear the unit, and I figured out a way to do this without hurting the muffler. And if anybody needs to see pictures of the muffler, they'll be posted later. This is first video. We're just getting this off the ground. So I'm going to start assembling the unit and we'll come back. So this lower part of the shaft has to go in, and there's an aluminum backing plate from the factory that needs to be installed. And on the outside there's a steel backing plate, which is also a steering stop. And then there's a pitman arm that comes across. That pitman arm has to be hooked into this hole here. It's really hard to do, but I've got a modified 5mm, it may be 6 Allen wrench. I'll show you that in a minute. So I'm going to install this and we'll come back. So what we found trying to assemble this unit here, the lower shaft and the dog bone that goes to the rack and pinion steering, is that we couldn't get the bolt into the pitman arm for the rack and pinions. So by loosening these two bolts right here and just letting it so it was sloppy, we were able to get it together. And once we did that, everything went smoothly. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to install the electric assist unit. Now you'll notice on this spline shaft there's a notch that has to line up with this hole so I can put an Allen screw in there so that the unit holds together. So after fetching a plastic mallet, I can tap this together. These fit really snug, which is another thing I liked about the parts we're using. Do not hit on the shafts. I can now see that notch here starting to come into this window. And it appears to be centered. So once it's centered, I'm going to take an Allen wrench So after a little massaging and turning this to one angle so that we weren't straight on that set screw, made it a lot easier and it went right together. Now you can see everything's nice and close here. We're going to put the upper steering shaft in next, and one of the safety issues that I was concerned with if any of this came apart or came loose is that the handlebars would come free from the sled, which is why we have this clamp here, this bar clamp, and it'll stop against the bearing support for the handlebars. I'm going to install this into the mount up here. Also, in addition, we put this bearing mount so that when this all bolts together, and you'll see it further on in the video, it's much more stable. Let's get this lined up and installed. Now we need to make sure that our spindles are straight and that our handlebars are lined up and they're 180 off. Get our handlebars lined up. Okay. Now the most you can be off, because this is a 36 spline, is 5 degrees. And you can adjust that to get your handlebars centered by adjusting the tie rods. And anytime you do that, when you do it initially, you're going to need to go back to the dealer and have them put it on buds and set all the parameters. There'll be more detail about that in the Smart Shock section of the website snowmobileshocks.com. Where's that Allen at? Now this power steering unit is powerful enough to put on a 1964 F100 Ford pickup custom to convert it to power steering. So that's how much effort this system can put out, which is why I chose a system with a variable control. Now after that's lined up and tightened, you can see it's pretty snug. It clears the power valves, and I can see that we've already made a mistake, but we'll go back and correct our mistake. We have to install this part right here to secure it to the chassis. So we'll brake, I'll fix this and come back. Alright, we learned something putting this together. Tighten nothing. Just start all your bolts loose and get everything lined up and put together, and then go back through and tighten everything and make sure nothing binds. We've done that. Worked out really well. You see this piece that I've added here? This keeps the unit from moving, which would give you an uncomfortable feel. They say it's not needed, but I felt like it was. The white plastic you see here is an isolator that goes between the aluminum and the bracket that's made out of aluminum. I didn't want aluminum on aluminum. I wanted some nylon to protect it there. So you can see I've got the upper mount back in its original place. I've got the clamp here so that if something were to come loose, not likely, the handlebars can't just come pulling off the machine. This will stop that. This bar clamp here will also stop that, and this is the same as this one up here. And I'm using it to give it additional support so that it's more rigid. Then the next thing is I put these pieces on. These come in the kit. They bar clamps for bicycles. And I'm using them to mount this piece of aluminum that I've had made. Well, as I said, we'd come back and take a look at what I've done with the exhaust back on. You'll notice right off the bat the ECU is not mounted where we had hoped to mount it. It just didn't work out there. The hood wouldn't come on. So we mounted it up here off of the front bumper, which I think actually worked out really, really well. You can see how I mounted it there. It's just a simple bracket. I put the exhaust on. Everything went well there. The hood fits on. Everything went well there. ECU's mounted here. I've got the wiring harness, and I actually wired it to the battery and power and have tested it. And hey, it works. So we will be selling these in limited production to qualified buyers. This will protect the integrity of what I'm doing here. I want to get it out and test it. I don't want to put an unknown on the market. So if you're serious and you're interested and this is something you think you can deal with, feel free to give me a call.